Hey everybody, Catalyst here. Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are doing well. And today we're going to, oh my god, I just looked over and saw how tired I looked. Holy shit, I look really tired. Battlefield is actually just sucking the soul out of me. Not like that. More like a, what's that character from Mortal Kombat's name? Shang Tsung? That kind of more like that. Today we're going to be doing some updated power rankings for all the specialists in Battlefield 2042. It's been a couple of months since we last did an updated power ranking, so obviously we have a lot to go over, including the new specialists, which isn't so new anymore, but definitely new since the last time that we've done a power rankings video. So that's what we're going to be doing today. It's going to be a longer video. We're going to go through every single specialist and talk about where they stand in the current meta, what specialists you should be using, what specialists you shouldn't be using, and what specialists maybe could be better but still have a little bit of ways to go. So with that being said, sit back, relax, get a snack. Let's get into it. So as you can see here today, we have all of our specialists lined up in the bottom of your screen right now, and we have some new tiers. Some of them are returning, some of them have been renamed a little bit. We do have some new tiers. We have the rainy day tier, reserved for specialists that are just okay, and maybe I'll break them out on a rainy day, but I wouldn't exactly consider them to be a must-play specialist. Okay, let's start with Sundance. And you know what? Actually, going to make an on-the-fly change right now. We're going to add a row below here, and we're going to name it the Stop Nerfing Me category. And I am going to put Sundance in there right away. Yeah, so Sundance has kind of fallen into this weird position where she keeps getting nerfed for no explainable reason. And it's not that Sundance is a bad specialist. I think in the grand scheme of things, she still is pretty useful, especially if you play Conquest, but she just keeps having her kit stripped away from her. DICE recently removed the anti-armor grenade, so now you only get one scatter grenade to go along with your wingsuit, whereas before you had the scatter grenade and the anti-armor grenade. And that kind of added a little bit of versatility to Sundance's kit to where you could continuously pursue vehicles if you couldn't quite get the kill with the C4. I still think dive bombing people with Sundance is the best way to play that character, especially if you're vehicle hunting. But now that kind of aspect to her kit has been taken away from Sundance because DICE removed the anti-armor grenade. And it wasn't even the fact that the anti-armor grenade was strong. They removed it because they had a bug with it and just really didn't bother fixing it. So it's not that Sundance is a bad specialist. It's just that Sundance keeps getting nerfed and there is less and less reason to use her because there's less and less versatility in her kit. So really the only thing that you'd be using Sundance for is her wingsuit to get around, which is good in certain game modes. It's just not what she used to be. Oh, and by the way, this did come up in the comment section of the previous video, but this is going to be a breakthrough biased video. I'm going to try to do my best to give my opinions on pretty much every single game mode, but since breakthrough is the most popular game mode in the game and Conquest can be a little bit hit or miss, I play mostly breakthrough. This is going to be a more breakthrough biased list. That's just kind of the way that it is. Okay, moving on here, we have Dozer, and Dozer is actually going to be not in the Dozer tier. This is another big change, and I know you Dozer enjoyers right now are going to be praising the sun, praising whatever Dozer god that you believe in, because Dozer is no longer the worst specialist in the game, and he no longer has his own tier. He is being moved up to the not good tier. Who is going to take Dozer's tier away from him? You'll have to watch the rest of the video to find out. So Dozer was the recipient of a couple of buffs with the Season 5 update. They made it to where you not only have increased movement speed with his shield now, they tightened up the movement a little bit with the shield as well, and now you can use the shield while ziplining. So a couple of nice small things that have made Dozer's shield a lot more usable, a lot more forgiving in certain areas, because previously all you could really do with Dozer is kind of back yourself into a corner, and if you got caught out in open spaces, you were kind of screwed considering how fast the turn radius of his shield was. So now that the turn radius is a little bit quicker, it gives him a little bit more mobility, and it makes Dozer a lot more viable in situations that aren't just being sandwiched into a room. Now, with that being said, I still think that there's a lot of inconsistencies with Dozer. I think really what he needs in order to take that next step into being a specialist that more people will play more frequently, is the hitbox on his shield needs to be tightened up just a little bit. I think it needs to be more consistent. There are a lot of times where I would have been going for a shield bash, and I felt like I should have earned that kill, and my shield bash just kind of bounced off of him like a plushie toy. And I think that really, in order for Dozer to take the next step into becoming a better specialist, the shield hitbox needs to be widened a little bit to have a little bit more forgivability. Now, I understand that that's a thin line because a shield with a massive hitbox can cause a lot of problems, but I think this is a good start in terms of making Dozer a more viable specialist in a assault category that is literally filled to the brim with extremely good specialists. And of course, Dozer's passive ability, the explosive reduction damage by 25%. I didn't think that this was that good. I've kind of come around a little bit more on it since the explosive spam in the game has gotten a little bit more excessive, considering how many explosives are in the game. The SPH launcher, you can take an SPH launcher to the face and still survive it, if I'm not mistaken. So with the more and more explosive spam that gets added to the game, and with Irish getting nerfed a little bit with his APS system, I think Dozer's passive ability also has increased value now. So Dozer, definitely not the worst specialist in the game. I think he still has a little bit of tweaking to go before he turns into a more viable specialist, in my opinion. Okay, moving on here to Crawford. Crawford is a specialist that I went back and forth on in terms of how much I enjoyed his kit. I originally thought he was great when he came out. The class update really kind of ruined him for me, and I think he's going to settle next to Dozer here in the not good category. Really, all that you do with Crawford is use him as a repair bitch, considering that that's what his kit was redesigned around. Obviously, a couple of updates ago, they nerfed his minigun to not be as good against infantry, but to be better against aircraft and other vehicles, and I don't think it's effective enough to warrant playing him over other engineer classes. The only thing that's really preventing him from being lower on the list is the fact that you do have a lot of options when using Crawford. Like, you still can use the minigun turret or the Vulcan minigun or whatever it's called to lock down specific areas. It's just not as effective, and I think it's very easy for Crawford to get overwhelmed now. The repair passive ability that he has is really strong in the right places, but again, we're looking at the specialist overall as a whole here and how it pertains to the rest of the game. You know, how specialists work with other specialists, how useful are they in a wide variety of circumstances, and Crawford just comes off as extremely niche, and I think that there's better specialists to play. Speaking of better specialists to play, we have Angel here. Angel is going to be the first specialist into the newly introduced Rainy Day category. Now, the Rainy Day category is a category that I made specifically for this video, in which I'm basically saying, yeah, this specialist isn't, you know, that bad. It's not that good either. Maybe I'll break him out on a rainy day if I have to. And that's kind of just how I feel about Angel. You know, kind of along the similar lines of Crawford. Angel is a specialist that suffers from having two other specialists in the same class that are just significantly better than he is and also do his specialist ability, which is give out ammo. Now, the one thing that Angel obviously has is the loadout crate, which can be useful at times, but I feel like I see a significant decrease in the amount of these loadout crates being used on the battlefield, since you can have more ammo available with Irish and Falck running ammo crates, which I think is the preferred loadout for a lot of Irish and Falck players. Angel just still feels to me like a specialist that got left behind with the class update, and there's no real reason to use him unless you're really going gung-ho on being that classic quote-unquote support specialist that just gives out ammo like it's candy at a street corner. I think we rated him as mid-AF in the last tier list, if I remember correctly. Let me check real quick. Yeah, we ranked him as mid-AF in the last tier list. I wouldn't really consider this a demotion. I don't think anything has changed with Angel. I just think that the rainy day category kind of fits how I feel about him a little bit better now. And now moving on, we have Blasco, who is going to be our first S tier specialist in this video. I didn't get to rank Blasco in the last video because she didn't come out yet. I made the last power rankings video for specialists right before season 4 came out around 3 months ago. Blasco is an S tier specialist and, in my opinion, is easily the best recon specialist in the game. You don't really know how much spotting is in this game until you give Blasco a proper try and use her for an extended amount of time. The amount of spots that you block in a game of Breakthrough specifically is absolutely insane. And she really is good at counteracting something that plagues the game, which is an abhorrent amount of spotting. Blasco really is the king, or I guess queen, of map control. She can quite frankly dominate an entire area, and that's just one Blasco. Again, something that we also need to consider when making these tier lists is how does having multiple types of one specialist affect the game, and having a couple of good Blascos on a team, especially a defending team in Breakthrough, is incredibly strong if not necessary. The X6 infiltration device not only just allows you to lock down areas, but it keeps your team off the map, as I said, and it allows Blasto to kind of operate in this bubble where you can sustain yourself for a long time and just stay alive forever because you're staying off the minimap. And if you cater your class towards Blasco as a specialist, running an assault rifle or an LMG with a suppressor, or my personal favorite, I love to run the BSVM with her, you can quite literally control an entire sector of the map, whether that be in Breakthrough or in Conquest. You can pretty much lock down an entire flag and keep yourself hidden. This is the ultimate stealth specialist in the game. That's not really a thing in Battlefield 2042, but if it were, you know, you can put Blasco in that category. I really cannot say enough good things about Blasco. This is easily the best recon specialist in the game. She's S tier. Moving on to Liz here. Liz is getting downgraded. I believed we had her in the good but not elite category last time. We're downgrading her to mid-AF. She was very, very strong around the time that I made the last power rankings video, and since then she's kind of been nerfed a little bit. I think the velocity of her guided missile got reduced about a week after I made that video, so Liz is the best engineer class specialist. I think that goes without saying. Boris and Crawford just don't have a candle to hold to her in that aspect. I know vehicle players are probably screaming, no, she is a lot better than mid-AF, and that's because there's a lot of things that also compound Liz to make her a little bit better than what I think she actually is. Obviously, there's a lot of desync with her Liz missiles, especially on the receiving end, that I know a lot of helicopter pilots and tank pilots, drivers, people have to deal with. But the reality is that the power of Liz, and I've been saying this from the very beginning, the power of Liz always comes from the amount of players in the game that are using Liz. If there's just one or two Liz's that are constantly harassing the vehicles, that's going to be annoying, but that's not going to be overly strong. But if there's like 5 or 6 players, because Liz happens to be the most popular engineer specialist, then that's where the balancing problems kind of come into play. I think her passive is still one of the more underrated passive abilities in the game, being able to spot weak vehicles. I definitely think that Liz has worth, and in a lot of ways I feel like mid-AF is being a little bit, I don't know, cautious about how good she really is. She definitely could be in the good but not elite tier, but with that being said, she definitely is worse than when we last ranked her, so I think that she's going to have to stay on the higher side of mid-AF for now. She's got a great passive ability. Depending on the capabilities of the Liz user and how many Liz users are in the lobby, she can range from slightly annoying to overpowered. And that's kind of the way that a lot of these specialists work, but it's always been most true with Liz. And that brings us to Paik. I was not very favorable of Paik when we last reviewed all the specialists. I think I had her in the not good category. I think I'm going to put her in the rainy day category. I still don't think that Paik in the current form of the game is all that great, but I definitely think that as far as like the entire meta is concerned, and in terms of how strong the recon class is and kind of the proxy buffs and nerfs that the recon class has received because Blasco is so strong, she's definitely not at the bottom of the barrel of recons anymore, but she's still not a specialist that I would consider playing more than maybe once in a blue moon, which is why I'm putting her in the rainy day category. I think what is saving Paik from going much lower on the list is the fact that you can do quite a lot with her kit if you try hard enough. Her kit in of itself is not that special anymore. They've nerfed the EMG scanner into the ground to the point where I honestly think I get killed more by using the scanner than I do actually using the scanner. The scanner obviously now flashes enemies instead of highlighting them permanently through walls, so her kit got a massive nerf, and as an overall, I would say it's just not that great. But if you combine it with maybe a motion sensor in the class, if you're smart with your insertion beacon, if you use smoke grenades, I don't know if I already said that already, but like smoke grenades, motion sensor, using a high octane aggressive class, there are definitely ways that you can be effective with Paik. I just think that there's a lot of better specialists, and she's definitely mid in terms of the recon class as well. So it's not that she's horrible, she's definitely not great. I definitely just wouldn't play her unless I'm taking her out on a rainy day because I'm bored and need a different specialist to play. And next on the list, we have Falck, who is our second S tier specialist. In fact, I would go as far as to say that Falck is currently the best specialist in the game. Now, medic or healing specialist have always been strong in Battlefield. That's just the way that it is. Any character in any FPS game that you play that offers you instant health and self-sustain is going to be strong. But with the way that the current meta is in the game, considering weapon proficiencies, considering the changes that have gone on since the class update, considering the amount of explosive spam in the game, her ability to have 12 self-stims, even though they're not technically supposed to be self-stims, they're supposed to be Surret and healing for pretty much everybody, but you might as well treat Falck's Surret pistol as having 6 individual heals for you at any given time before you have to reload. That self-sustain is crazy. And if you find a good Falck player that is not only keeping herself alive with her Surret pistol ammo, but also using that to compound that and keep others alive as well, Falck, a really good Falck player can dominate a lobby, and it's not even close. And I think the really telling thing is that you used to only see Mackay sweats. Like sometimes you would see like a really good Falck player and, you know, you would come across them every once in a while, but Mackay used to be the predominant sweat class. Now I think the predominant sweat class is Falck. You see a couple of Falcks sprinting and running around and smoke grenading and throwing health and ammo everywhere, and it's a scary sight. She can basically do Angel's job for him. She has the fastest revive in the game, not to mention multiple ways of reviving, obviously, since she's the support class. So she can defib and Surret pistol for quick heals. She can revive faster than anybody else. She can keep herself alive more easily than anybody else, and she can keep others alive more easily than anybody else. This is without a doubt the strongest character in the game right now. Mackay has held that throne for me personally for a long time, but it is really, really hard to say that Falck is not the best character in the game right now. Now we go from the best specialist in the game to the brand new the brand new worst specialist in Battlefield 2042, and that is Boris. So we need to do a ceremonious changing from the Dozer tier to now the Boris tier. Boris has been a specialist that has been on the precipice of being the worst specialist in the game for a long time, especially since they nerfed his turret into the ground almost a year ago at this point. Ever since his turret got nerfed into the ground, he's been a specialist that has been teetering on the edge of just being absolutely terrible. And I think with more and more time, and especially with the buffs to Dozer recently, he just has fallen into the pit of being a specialist that you come to think to yourself and say, why exactly am I playing the specialist when I could be playing not only a different specialist, but I can be playing, you know, a better specialist in my own class? More than any other time in his history of being in this game, the quality of the Boris that you get comes from the quality of the player and not the specialist. And again, we're ranking the specialists in terms of how strong their kit is, not how good certain people are with specialists, because theoretically, right, you can do good with any specialist in this game. And I think my gameplay on the screen right now is probably indication with that. Like, I'm absolutely slapping people with Boris in the gameplay, but the power of Boris, the specialist overall, by himself is just not strong. And really, the value that you get from Boris really is just from the skill of the player, because the turret is nothing but annoying, and really the turret is not effective at what it's supposed to do, which is harass vehicles. And quite frankly, the meta has developed in such a way where a lot of the vehicles that are killing you in this game, unless it's like a cav brawler that's about to be shoved down your throat, a lot of the vehicles in this game, like the Lat V recon farming or the Super Hind or the helicopters, they're not really going to be targeted by Boris's turret all that much. And inevitably what ends up happening is the turret ends up targeting infantry, and the damage is so weak that unless that person or that enemy player is weak to begin with, they'll get shot a couple of times by the Boris turret, find where the Boris turret is, because the Boris turret spots itself, obviously, when you get shot by it, and the turret just dies. So really, his main ability just ends up revolving around a turret that is extremely weak, and his passive ability also revolves around that turret that's extremely weak. So really, Boris has packaged himself into being a purely defensive specialist that doesn't really allow you to move around the map if you want to get the most out of his ability. Now, sure, you can definitely be capable of like leaving your turret somewhere and then going somewhere else and then being able to work around that and giving yourself a little bit more mobility, but Boris's kit is just not that great in my opinion. In fact, I think it's awful. Why am I sugarcoating this? The kit's awful. He just doesn't do enough, not only with his abilities, but within his class to warrant playing him over the other specialists. He's easily the worst specialist in the game right now for me, and it's not even close. So congratulations, Dozer fans. Dozer's no longer the worst in the game. It's Boris. Sorry, Boris players. And that brings us now to Irish. Rest in peace, Michael K. Williams. Irish was an S tier specialist. The nerfs that he had gotten have moved him down to the good but not elite category, and the changes really haven't felt like they've done a tremendous amount. Like it's not a change that you're going to notice right away and say, oh my gosh, they absolutely ruined Irish. But they hurt Irish where he mattered the most, and that's in those tight areas where there's a lot of explosive spam coming through the door or around an objective. And, you know, having a couple of Irishes with a lot of APSs around really kept your team in the fight and kept the explosive spam from being too much of an issue. But now that they made the changes to his APS system that kind of allows players to filter through the APS at some points, it really hurts him when Irish is the most useful, and that's why he's being knocked down a tier. Oh, the good thing is that Irish is also still one of the better support players, and you do get the full health revive, you do get the quicker revive, you do get the health and ammo that you can distribute. So Irish can still be an extremely useful specialist. It's just what he was best at and what made him S tier no longer makes him S tier because they ended up nerfing it. So he's like borderline S tier, but again, DICE hurt him where he mattered the most, and now explosive spam, especially in tight clustered breakthrough areas, is just going to be a lot more prevalent because Irish just isn't that good in that area anymore. He's fine everywhere else. You won't even notice that he's nerfed, but like I've been saying, and at this point I'm just repeating myself, it's where he matters the most where you will notice these changes, which make him not S tier anymore. And that leaves us here to Rao. Rao is going to be the second inductee into the Stop Nerfing Me category. Now, Rao didn't really get a direct nerf like Sundance did for this update, but what DICE have done is they've added cyberware, I forget the exact language of it, but they've added the option for vehicles to basically become invulnerable to hacking to pretty much every single vehicle in the game. So I believe there's 2 equipment slots on these vehicles. I'm not a vehicle player, so if there's any vehicle experts in the comment section right now, please feel free to correct me if anything that I say is wrong here. But let's just say you're using the M1A5 tank, right? Your equipment slot number 1 will allow you to use the APS system. Your second equipment slot will allow you to use the cyberware hacking suite or whatever, which essentially makes vehicles like invulnerable to hacking from Rao. And I'm fairly certain that every single vehicle in the game, apart from the transport vehicles, now has the ability. So DICE just did an incredible, like, fuck you to Rao and just like choke slammed him into the ground by adding all of these cyber hacking fuddy-duddy things to every single vehicle. So now where you would have brought Rao out if there was a very strong vehicle presence in your game, like let's say your team was getting dominated by enemy team's vehicles, you just pull out a couple of Raos and it would definitely help turn the side of the battle. And really where where Rao was most useful was in attacking those ground vehicles. Air vehicles can just fly away and they can be annoyed by Rao, whatever, but the vehicles were the most susceptible to the Rao hack, where you would get hacked and then a bunch of people would swarm you with C5 and you'd be essentially dead because you couldn't protect yourself. Now, a lot of players I feel like are going to opt to use the cyber warfare program suite. I literally need to figure out what that's called. And he's not strong at all. The addition of the cyber warfare equipment slot to all of the vehicles have basically been the nail in the coffin for Rao, and the only reason, in my opinion, that you would play him is to utilize his passive ability, which shows you who's shooting you very briefly for like 5 seconds or something. But honestly, I don't find that ability to be all that useful. It's definitely niche to say the least. So yeah, whereas Sundance is in the stop nerfing me category and realistically could be in the mid-af to rainy day category, Rao is a specialist that could definitely be in the not good or even the Boris tier, but is in the stop nerfing me category because he just, like I said, he just keeps getting haymakers to the face. And yeah. And that leads us to Mackay, who we could probably speed run through talking about Mackay because Mackay's been an S tier specialist since the alpha of Battlefield 2042. The movement speed is nuts. The grapple hook just gives you instant vertical high ground over anybody at any given time. He is just such a dynamic specialist, and even after the nerf to his grapple hook range, he can still get on some pretty tall things, or at least take some time to maneuver himself onto the tallest buildings and structures in the game. The grapple hook nerf really, it definitely weakened a little bit, but just instant high ground with a grapple hook and the movement tech that you can do with Mackay at any given time just makes him strong. There is no way that Mackay is not an S tier specialist until they tweak his passive ability and give enhanced movement speed to the rest of every other specialist. There's like this weird cult of people that really think that Mackay is trash, but I just don't see it. Mackay is the Canadian overlord of Battlefield 2042. I had to turn my AC down. I am hot as hell. It's getting to that time in Florida where everything is just a melting pot of anger and sadness, and everything is warm. So I'm about to blast my AC and drive up my electric bill. Here we have Casper. Casper is moving up a little bit to the mid-af tier. DICE made some additions and changes to his recon drone that makes it a little bit more versatile. Really, I thought about putting Casper in the rainy day category because me personally, I only break him out when I'm kind of memeing around or just kind of want to sit down and spot people for a while. But I think, Casper in the right hands can be a pretty capable specialist. And a lot of you I know have been beating the Casper drum in the comment section for these videos for a long while now. And I think, I'm starting to come around to it. I'm starting to, view Casper as, a decent enough specialist. I still think that there are quite a few specialists on the list that I would play over Casper, just in my personal opinion. Even some of the specialists in the rainy day category. Like, I think I would play Paik over Casper, but in terms of the grand scheme of things, and considering every single game mode and considering my biases and my own personal playstyle, I could definitely see why Casper is pretty popular, especially in the recon class. The motion detection suit is a very underrated passive, and it is true. My big knock on Casper in the past was, okay, so you have one person that's ratting in a bush and spotting everybody on the map, and that's incredibly strong, but every subsequent Casper is just kind of going to be a big pit of nothing. And with the addition of some features to his recon drone, that criticism kind of doesn't have as much weight as it did before, and he definitely deserves kind of just being the dictionary definition, the poster child of the mid-af tier. If you have a good Casper that's not just ratting in a bush along with the other casters in the map spotting everybody, I think that he does have a place in being a viable component to a squad. And that takes us to the very last specialist on this list, and that is Zain, and Zain is going into the good but not elite tier. Nothing has really changed with Zain to make him any better or worse, which is why he's in the same tier that he was last time. I think that Zain has a very, very, very strong passive. As I said, it's my personal favorite in the game, and depending on your playstyle, if you do what you need to do to cater to Zain, he can be very strong. There are certain weapons and gun combinations and class setups that you can use that make Zain an impossible force, especially if you want to go completely like Mr. Bombastic on everybody. Go Scar H grenade, go Scar H with the grenade launcher, go SPH launcher, go Blasco, grenade, literally anything that you can do to trigger Zain's passive to just make you an absolute juggernaut just makes the character stronger. And of course there is the air burst as well, which can vary sometimes. It can vary between what the hell, this gadget is literally broken and should be nerfed, to wow, this is really annoying, I'm getting nothing but hit markers. So really the amount of combinations and versatility that you have with Zain in terms of making your class setup, I think just makes Zain incredibly strong, and playing around his passive has always been something that I try to do to make Zain really a specialist that is very unique. There's definitely a lot of people that would argue that he's S tier, but I think that Zain probably fits perfectly in the good but not elite tier with our friend Irish. And that is the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that wasn't too long, but I hope that was entertaining for you. If you enjoyed the video, make sure that you drop a like and leave a comment down below on stuff that you agree, stuff that you disagree. Leave your own personal list down there if you would like. Likes and comments really help me out in the algorithm, so if you really enjoyed that video just that much, do all of that and subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a fantastic community, fantastic viewer base. Love you all. Make sure to stay safe, tell your loved ones that you love them, and oh, last but not least, I'll see you all another time.